I polled my viewers asking them which of these 4 massive paint ranges was their favorite, and Vallejo came out on top by quite a bit. Today, we're gonna put this classic paint range through its paces, testing finish, wet palette performance, flow, opacity, and more to see if the new range they recently released is as good as the old faithful stuff, or if Vallejo missed the mark. Part of my testing will involve painting a miniature, and for Vallejo, I'm painting a Trench Crusade model, my first ever. All right, let's prep this figure. Vallejo is a difficult brand to review just due to the sheer amount of paint product they carry, from the standard model color and game color to mecha specific ranges to sets that feature collaborations with other hobby companies and so much more. In order to simplify this process as much as makes sense, I'm going to use the paint from their freshly made Vallejo game color starter set. I will supplement this with other paints as necessary to get a broader picture of what Vallejo has to offer. This should give me a good sense of the range as a whole and also allow me to share some opinions about the starter set specifically. Interestingly, they don't have a starter set for the model color range, which is what I would have chosen if it existed. Our tests break down into 2 categories, stuff we can actually measure in a somewhat reliable way to more vibes-based tests. I feel like this mixed approach to an artful topic like paint can give us the best idea of what's going on. Let's start somewhere simple. Vallejo's paint comes in 18 milliliter bottles and the MSRP is $4.99 USD. That'll be fairly easy to compare across multiple ranges when I've tested more of them. On top of that, they use dropper bottles, which are now a transparent clear plastic. This is a welcome change to the milky plastic we get from everyone else, including them in the past. These new bottles make it much easier to see the actual paint color, but they still clog like every other dropper bottle. One would think that the mini painting industry would have sorted this problem out by now, but clearly not. As far as availability goes, I polled all my viewers asking them if they had any amount of this paint available to them within a 30-minute drive, and 65% of you said yes. That's surprisingly low, but maybe it'll seem higher when I poll you guys about the rest of the paint ranges sometime in the future. All right, on to painting the model. With the model primed black, we'll begin our first test of trying out the white ink for some undercoat action. I tried using the ink undiluted at first and then realized that it was coming out a little speckly and opaque, so some thinning was in order. This is a positive thing, as the ink will have the opacity when and if I need it. It's much easier to thin a paint than it is to thicken it. This is a good time to mention that Vallejo sent me all this paint, but is in no way shaping my opinion of the product. They did not have any say in this video and did not see it before it went live. Okay, let's start actually painting. I mixed up my first base coat for this minis jacket that I'm applying with an airbrush. I'm preparing for this video and for the future paint range comparisons I plan to do. I reached out to you guys asking what you look for when evaluating new paint that you buy. Several of you mentioned testing how the paint mixes. In this brief test, the Vallejo Game Color paints mixed how I would expect any old hobby brand to mix. But how could we be more scientific about this? Most modern hobby paint ranges have so many available options that you never really need to mix a paint. So how do we test it? To be somewhat consistent across ranges, I developed an experiment with the help of Benjamin Cantor, fellow science enthusiast miniature painter. Using only the colors available in the starter paint set, we're going to create a Vallejo Game Color starter set gamut. A gamut is simply a range of colors. In this case, how many colors this starter set can achieve represented as a percent. Compared to all available colors, how many can this set reliably reproduce? I began by painting swatches of each color in the set over a white undercoat until I reached as close to full opacity as I could tell. I then mixed each paint with its hue neighbor. For example, this set has a red and a blue and no other paint in between, so I mixed those two to get an in-between color. Then I photographed them as accurately as possible so I could analyze them in Photoshop. I then averaged the color swatches to reduce any inconsistencies, get the hex values of those colors, plot them on a color wheel, and then calculate how much of that color wheel is covered by the set. When it comes to this set and mixing, it's clear there's a massive hole in the purple world, and trying to mix one results in a pretty crappy low saturation option. Need some holiday gift ideas for a hobby nerd? Fantic sent me their K2 Nano Precision battery powered drill, and my first impression was, this packaging is getting me hot and bothered. The design of this tool is very thoughtful, from the exposed USB charging port on the outside of the case to the 2 internal storage compartments.
Inside this sleek case, you'll find 20 high-speed steel drilling bits that range from 0.6 to 3.2 millimeters in size. The K2 Nano has 2 operating speeds that you can alternate between by rotating the collar at the business end. This feature is great because you can drill holes in plastic models without melting the model and making a much larger hole than you intended. The drill can be double tapped to run continuously or can be held down for a finer degree of control. Powering this drill is an 800 milliamp hour battery, so recharging won't happen too frequently, but you'll know when you need to because of the battery status LED on the side of the device. You can also operate the drill with clockwise rotation and counterclockwise. Honestly, having a power drill is an essential part of my hobby kit in 2025, and the K2 Nano from Fantic fits the bill. You can find a link to this device in the description below. And right now, Fantic is running a sale for the K2 Nano now until December 12th. Viewers can get up to 44% off with the coupon code MINIACK2N. It would make a wonderful gift for the holiday season for a hobby nerd in need. Thanks to Fantic for sponsoring this video. All right, back to my review of Vallejo Game Color.
You may notice something missing from this test and the future ones in this video, and that's something to compare Vallejo Game Color to. My goal for this video is to develop a series of tests that I can apply to any paint range. Before I submit what those tests are, I want to share my ideas with you to get an idea if I should bother with what I'm doing or if my methods are unscientific and in need of some changes. Once you've watched this video, let me know down in the comment section below what I can do better so we can together develop a set of truly useful tests that I can then use on future videos to slowly build up a big comparison of a bunch of paint ranges. Undoubtedly, I'll have to backtrack several times to retest things as I further refine my methods, and that is the plan. Okay, back to the model. Let's next test how this paint glazes. This is a pretty easy test because it's related to the finish of the paint, and in the case of Vallejo Game Color, it's very matte. Matte paint acts as a grip tape for future layers of paint, which causes glazing to be a lot easier. Instead of the surface being shiny and slick, which would cause paint to bead up and slide around, it sticks down where you put it. By the way, if you struggle with glazing, check out my tutorial on the subject, linked down in the description below and also in the upper right-hand corner of the screen right now. I'll continue to work on the jacket, pushing the contrast by darkening the shadows and brightening the highlights. You may have seen in the background of a few shots my sexy cutting mat. In case you didn't know, my entire web store is buy one, get one half off this holiday season. Now until Christmas, you can buy a brush coffin and get a cutting mat half off. You can buy any one of my display models, including the cheerleader, and get the second one half off. You can also buy any one of my 32mm models and get the second one half off. And lastly, you can buy any one of my t-shirts and get the second one half off. Additionally, I also increased the discount that you get while buying a miniature and its corresponding master class course. You now get 20 bucks off when you pair the two together. And yes, it does apply when you do the buy one, get one half off. You can get 2 display models and 2 masterclass courses. The second model will be half off and both courses will be 20 bucks off. Thank you so much for supporting my channel in this way. It means a lot to me. All right, back to reviewing Vallejo Game Color. Let's talk about consistency across the starter set. Some areas of inconsistency that I noticed were that dark green dried glossy sometimes, as you can see on the armor of this figure at this stage. Other times, it dried matte. It undoubtedly has something to do with how much I'm thinning the paint. Bloody Red was thicker than the rest of the paints in the starter set for some reason. Lastly, Leather Brown dried way darker than what it was while wet. Other than these strange differences, everything else was fairly consistent. Let's move on to some skin tones, which are interestingly missing from the Vallejo Game Color set. I'm not referring to just simply Caucasian skin tones, but really any kind of skin tone is missing, so I had to mix up something believable, which I was able to do without too much trouble. But if you're not comfortable with mixing, this may be a sticking point for you with Vallejo Game Color. One thing that isn't hard to test is wet palette performance, or how long a paint can stay on a palette before splitting. Here are all the paints in the starter set, and after an hour, most of them are fine, with the exception of Goblin Green. My plan for testing this is to rate each paint from minimum to moderate to severe splitting after 1 hour of being on a palette undiluted. Jumping back to the Mini, I wanted to test some wet blending on this big, beautiful shield. VGC isn't the thickest paint that I've used, but I'd say it's definitely on the thicker side, which I found helped with achieving wet blending. If paint is thin and running, it doesn't seem to mix as nicely on the model. If you need help with wet blending again, check out my video on the topic. As you can see, I'm able to achieve a wet blend without any problem, but this is hardly a scientific test, and I'm not entirely sure how to come up with one. So let me know if you have any ideas or if I should even bother including this in my future comparisons. A big reason that I'm painting a Trench Crusade model for this video is because it was the quarterly theme on my Discord server, which you get access to by being a patron of the channel. Every single quarter we have a theme, and back in Q2, it was Trench Crusade. You can tell I'm a little bit behind, but I'm trying to catch up now that I moved in and ready to start painting again. On the screen now, you can see a bunch of other Trench Crusade miniatures painted by my patrons who are also participating in the quarterly theme. Patreon is a fantastic way to support the channel, and I appreciate the heck out of all my patrons. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it endlessly, truly. If you guys want to get involved in the next quarterly challenge or anyone in the future, check out my Discord, which you can get access to again through Patreon, link down in the description below. I also wanted to test some of the technical paints in the range, like the rust, and honestly, I was a little bit disappointed. As far as I can tell, it's not much different than an ink or a wash. Whereas something like Dirty Down Rust is genuinely a new product, the rust from Vallejo seems to be a familiar concoction of medium, water, and pigment. Something else I want to test is flow, thickness, and opacity, and we can kind of do it all in the same way. I think it's interesting how all of the different ranges have different thicknesses, and the best way I've come up to test that is to weigh a specific amount of paint and then compare how much that paint settles after it dries. To test flow and opacity, I'll do the same thing. Weigh an amount of paint, and then with a little janky brush holder carriage thing I made out of styrene, I'll run a brush through that little puddle of paint over a strip of black and white so we can see not only how opaque it is, but also how long that brush strokes last for, indicating something about its flow. For these last few tests, I'm not thinning the paint at all. It's better to test the limits of these products straight out of the bottle, and it also makes it a lot easier to be consistent across ranges. Admittedly, I'm not sure if weight is the best measurement for paint. Volume seems like an obvious one, but it's very difficult to measure the volume of paint, especially if it's on the thicker side. On to testing the metallics, and boy, oh boy, does that gold paint truly suck. God awful coverage. Fortunately for Vallejo, the story doesn't end there. The dark silver and the lighter silver have much better opacity, but as far as metallic paint goes, these definitely aren't the best that I've used. Fairly large pigment results in a more sparkly look than I'm a fan of, especially with the darker one. I washed all the armor in sepia to give it a grungy look and did minimal highlighting from there to bring out some of the shine. All right, back to some science. I primed and painted some minis in Vallejo products, and then, with a rock tumbler, tumbled those minis for 3 minutes. I gave the primer and paint overnight to cure before testing. After 3 minutes, you could begin to see some damage, but it wasn't too bad, so I did it for another 3 minutes. Again, it was a little bit worse, but not too bad. This kind of test, with a set amount of time for paint curing and tumbling, will achieve easily comparable results about paint toughness across ranges. The only challenging thing is guaranteeing that I'm applying an even number of layers. I can't apply, say, 10 layers of Vallejo and then do 7 for Monument. So figuring out how to accurately measure what a layer of paint is on my to-do list. We're getting close to finishing up this model, so let's try a few more of those technical paints on this base. I grabbed a product that was called Moss, but was also bright yellow, and when applied with a sponge to the base, it looked exactly like normal acrylic paint. Vallejo's own site says the technical paints are completely reformulated in order to reproduce different effects, and I'm not buying it one bit. In an effort to hide this mustard yellow paint on my base, I covered it with another technical paint called Acid, which seemed to be a thicker satin green wash. Again, nothing about this says completely reformulated. Let's wrap this up. After all is said and done, what do I think about the new Vallejo game color? To be honest, it's perfectly fine. I could use this paint for the rest of my life and be fine with that. I may want a fluo paint that has better coverage, a glossy black wash, some special effect paints that actually do something different, but for 90% of my painting, this stuff is good, if not great. That being said, Vallejo game color kind of confuses me. Back in the day, there was a clear divide between VMC and VGC. Model color was more matte, had a more desaturated range, and might have been considered a paint range that was better suited for someone with a bit more experience in painting. VGC had more vibrant colors and more of a satin finish. This made sense for gamers and beginners alike that want colors that pop on the table and colors that work well with washes. Satin paints work better for washes because they break the surface tension more easily than something that's matte. But now, everything is dead matte and both ranges have bright and vibrant colors. Vallejo seems like they're maintaining two different paint ranges that aren't different at all just to sell you more paint, and that's kind of lame. In a modern hobby world where every paint range is fairly usable, the thing that separates them and makes them useful in your collections is characteristics like the finish. Personally, I want a few satin paints in my collection, so Vallejo making all their paints the same makes it less useful to me. That's gonna do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out all the way to the end. If you voted on one of the polls that informed this video, I appreciate it a lot. Thank you so much. Please leave some comments down below about how I could change these tests to make them better, either more applicable to you and your needs or more scientific so I can do better comparisons across ranges. If you like this channel and you want to support it, there are a number of ways to do that. Things I mentioned earlier are Patreon. Don't forget the holiday sale on my web store. You can also buy the hobby equipment that I use through my Amazon affiliate links down in the show notes below. Subscribe or die! And most importantly, don't forget to paint more metal!